Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is Roger Hanson again with another uh, short stream that I am wanting to do. Today is going to be a topic which I have been uh, really interested in for quite a long time, but really haven't had a chance to get around to doing much of it. It has to do with storytelling and writing. I'd just like to, make it a point in the week to where I can talk about some of the things that I do when it comes to writing and projects that I'm interested in doing, and maybe discuss them if anybody's interested in having a conversation about it. Um, it's like I said in my comment or my post earlier. If anybody wants to have a conversation, they're more than welcome to join me with Jetsy on minds.com. And if you don't feel like doing that, you can go to my chat, which is 24/7 live TV with Roger Hanson. At the moment, I'm not doing the 24/7. I'm just doing a daily stream, but I do plan on doing that eventually once I start getting better content, more content that I can put on there, because I don't want to do the same stuff. So if you guys want to get on there, you're more than welcome to. You can do a video. You don't have to do video chat. You can do the just straight conversation. It's up to you. So I'm not picky about it, but if you want to talk about it, you can. So with that being said, I'm gonna get started with what I wanted to, or what I'm wanting to talk about. Now, the one thing that I've been wanting to do is a project that I've been working on now for about almost a year, maybe. Could be longer, I'm not for sure, but it was doing a short story with a plot. Now, the story that I have set up is kind of different in my opinion. Okay, I've set the plots up according to more than one short story, and each short story has its own plot, but every short story is connected. You know what I mean? The first one's connected to the second, so forth. Um, the first plot, it concerns a fictional environment or land called Lycia, or Lycia, however you want to pronounce it. And then it concerns humans, in a world that is far off, and Earth and everything here on Earth doesn't even pertain to the story, okay? Um, then I have a second plot to it, a second short story that I'm wanting to do, and it pertains to the Draconians, which are reptilian beings. And I wanted to make it to where these stories connect to one another. And then there's a time difference where the first story happens like thousands of years before the third story, and so forth, and they're all connected, and they have their own lore and stuff like that. Um, I've been working on it for a while, and I think I'm getting some progress done on the first short story, but what I'm finding is that it's a lot more difficult for me to actually do a short story with a plot. And I've always had a problem with writing short stories. I can write along with them with no problem whatsoever, but when it comes to short stories, I've always had a problem with doing short stories, much less putting a plot on it and doing it that way. But I am learning I am learning a lot from doing short stories, though, because especially putting a plot on it, because I have to actually, you know, I have to restrain myself basically. I can't get too wordy with the things I have to say, and I have a certain time, a certain amount of words that I can use within that time period of my writing. So it's kind of showing me some discipline there. Um, I am going through and I'm doing the raw draft, and then I'm gonna revise it for the first, second, third plots and everything like that as I go. So that's something that I have to get into. But right now I'm just kind of like writing out the story, but I have to take into consideration too, like little things that readers don't really like to hear. Like I have to put more conversation into my story, and I have to stop trying to tell the entire story to the reader. There's a point where you have to just tell the story and let the imagination of the reader take over. You know what I mean? I don't have to be so descriptive about things, but at the same time, I have to be descriptive enough to where it keeps their attention. Stuff like that, you know. Another thing that I have to do is, I have to have a basic idea of what I'm wanting to write about when it comes to these characters like the Draconians and the Lycians, and I have to put that into plot form. That is what one of the biggest problems I have had there is I have to come up with a concept and what I want to write about these creatures and these beings. And for me, I get a lot of my inspiration from ideas that came from ufology, some Forgotten Realms and Dungeons and Dragons, D&D, role-playing games, stuff like that. Because I do see where a lot of these ideas have been bounced off of each other, especially with ancient lore too. And I wanted to come up with something that kind of intertwines with that stuff, especially ancient history. But I want it to be fictional, and I don't want Earth or anything on this planet to relate whatsoever to what I'm writing about, if that makes any sense to you. That's what I'm doing with my short stories right now, and basically I'm trying to start over with a different plot for each short story that I come up with in a different outline, and then I'll go along with a rough draft, and then to the second short story I'll do the same thing, and until until each of them are created and everything. But the things that I'm having a hard time with is putting it together, a short story with a plot, much less putting an outline to it, to go with that plot and that short story. Now, the rough draft and the plot, they have to go along with one another too, and I constantly find myself changing the story as it progresses. Sometimes I'll start out with an idea, and then all of a sudden, as I'm writing the plot out and the rough draft, I'm saying, hold on, this doesn't work. So then I have to go back through and I have to look at the outline, and then I look at the plot and I say, okay, now what do I want to do here? And I find myself like getting a little bit too extreme in my story, or not enough, so there's times where I have to tame it down and take away some of the stuff that I wanted to put into it rather than put what I've wanted to do. And maybe later on, I don't know for sure, but maybe later on I can add that aspect to the story if it fits in. But right now, as I go, I'm finding that I have to clean it up even in that, perspective, that way of doing things. And this is me changing the story as it progresses, you know what I mean? Like, in my mind, when I first start out, I have the story in my head, this is the way I want to do it. But as I'm progressing in the story, I'm changing it. So, the best way for me to say it is some things concerned with writing is too much information at the beginning, and other subjects in the stories, they're just way too descriptive. And I'm learning that sometimes it isn't best to explain the whole story to the reader. So for that, the reason why I do that, like I said earlier, is because readers can imagine for themselves. They don't need me doing it for them. So when people have to, or don't have to, have an imagination when they're reading that story, or they don't have their imagination flaring, they become disinterested, so with that in mind, I have to try to keep the descriptive part of my writing, kind of at bay and not get carried away with it. Now, with all that said, I also want to mention too that I'm also going off of the plot, the Save the Cat plot, and it seems it also seems to have issues for me. I have issues with it, is what I should say. Writing short stories, like I said, has always been a problem with me, and much less trying to do it with a theme, a plot, an outline. Then I have to come up with this part of the Save the Cat plot, which is called the theme stated. And I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about there, but this theme stating is supposed to be like saying, or a moral or a plot to the story, you know what I mean, that's said by somebody who's insignificant, and later on your main character thinks, and these words cross his mind, and all of a sudden it makes sense, you know what I mean. It just drives me crazy, I do have to say though, again, I have learned a lot, and that is the one thing that I am grateful for, because I have learned a lot by doing it, but it's something that really is it's a challenge for me, because I've never done this, for one thing, and I've always been able to write stories, but I've never been able to structure it really the way that other people would expect me to do it, you know what I mean? So it's a learning process for me, and I'm actually getting to where I'm learning, and I'm doing pretty good at it, in my opinion. So I think that is something that I have really come to respect by it. Now, I can go and bring up some stuff that I am doing in my plot and discuss that too, because I really do want to make a decent length I don't know video I guess, or whatever it is I'm doing here of what I'm discussing, which is writing, because like I said, I need to come up with some good content to put on here. But with the Save the Cat beat sheet, you have Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. And then, see, the beat sheet was originally developed by Blake Snyder in Hollywood to help screenwriters plot movies, but they started finding out that it works just as well with graphic novels and just regular novels. Because the reason why it works so well with writers when it comes to making novels and graphic novels is because it breaks down into a 3-act structure. And they're small, specific, and sometimes just one scene long, So each section pushes the story forward in its own way. The exact word count, the page count of each section depends on how long your novel is and what type of story you're telling, You have to fill in your ideas for each section. You don't write your whole novel. You just jot down general ideas for sections and scenes, and then you go from there. So then you have Act 1, and that's the opening image, and that's generally 0 to 1%, and with that you show a before snapshot of your protagonist or your character in their world, and what life was like before your story or your adventure began, and that's generally like a 0 to 1% part of the story. Then you have your setup, and that is about 1 to 10%, and you keep showing the ordinary before world. You explore your character's life, your protagonist's life, and you include the flaws and challenges that character character has, and has to overcome in order to change for the better by the end of the story. Or it could be the other way around too, overcoming, just overcoming some of the problems that they have. And it doesn't have to be positive. It could be like not good at robbing a bank or something stupid, or I ain't gonna say something stupid like that, or just something like that. It could be just the opposite of being positive. It could be a bank robber who's not good at being a bank robber, so he perfects his art or anything like that, but he has to overcome a challenge, basically. And then right there in that area is where the theme stated has to happen. It happens during the setup, and somewhere in the setup you have to include a scene where the character says a insignificant character says something that hints to your character a big life lesson, and how your character has to change and grow by the end of the story. Your character won't understand the lesson though until later. So after you get through the setup, then you go into the catalyst, and that's about 10% of your story. And this is when life as your character knows it changes, and it's supposed to change forever. There's no going back to the before world from that point. Now, then you have to explain what the inciting incident that pushes the character into the next phase of the story is. And from there, you go into the debate. That's 11 to 20%. And that's where you show the character, your protagonist, questioning himself or themselves and resisting the path that lies ahead, wondering whether they have what it takes or whether or not they should just run home and hide under the bed. This is their last chance to chicken out, basically, and question themselves and stuff like that. So you've got that going on, which is pretty interesting right there. So you have that as Act 1, and that's just Act 1. There's 3 acts that goes to it. Then you have Act 2, and they usually call that Break Into 2 in Hollywood, and then there's Break Into 1, and like I said, this is all modeled off of movies and stuff like that, but they found that it was good for novels. And Break Into 2 is about another 20%, and this is where your character answers the call. After they question themselves and stuff, they make the choice to begin their adventure, transformation, journey, new thing, whatever, it shows that your character deciding to plunge into Act 2. Now, once you do break into 2, you go into the premise of the promise of the premise, and it's also called Fun and Games. That's 21 to 50%, and this is when the reader thinks, now we're getting to the good stuff. They hinted at the back cover of the book, so now this is where everything's starting to get good in the summary, basically. So one of the longest sections in the book. You have to show your character getting used to their new world, loving it, hating it, making mistakes, or doing well, meeting new people, and it's basically about keeping the reader entertained. Now, this happens usually during the promise of the premise. It's called the B story, and you have to introduce a new character or characters who eventually help the character, your character, learn their life lesson. That could be friends, mentors, love interest, nemesis, whoever they are, and then you gotta describe who they are and how will they help, you know what I mean? So you have the B story, which happens in the promise of the premise, and then after that you come to the midpoint, which is at the 50%. This moment is when everything seems great or everything seems awful, depending on your story. Either the fun and games section has led to a false victory for your character, where they think that they've been doing good so far, or it's led to a false defeat where they've been having a hard time so far. And what happens in this moment, halfway between beginning and end, is what this is. This is where everything happens right in the middle of your story, so it's halfway between the beginning and the end. So then, once you get past the midpoint, you go to what they call bad guys close in. This is 51 to 75%, and this is where you get ready for a bumpy ride. If your midpoint was a false victory, now things start to go wrong for you. If the midpoint was a false defeat, well, things seem to be looking up for your character, but bad guys are getting closer and will have something to say about it. Now, they'll have something to say about it. Now, note too that bad guys can be actual physical enemies, but they can also be emotional enemies, like doubt or jealousy or fear. Just show the character's newly built world beginning to unravel is what's basically important. This will also be one of the larger sections of the book as well, or the story as well, so keep that in mind. Now you have All Is Lost, which is 75%, and this is when something happens to make your character hit rock bottom. It's the absolute lowest part of your story. Maybe someone or something dies, either literally or figuratively. What does this moment look like for your character? Your protagonist now has time to react to their all is lost moment. First, we've done all is lost. Now we're at Dark Night of the Soul. That's 76 to 80%, and your protagonist now has time to react to the all is lost moment, to mourn what they lost and wallow in hopelessness. It's not pretty. They're worse off than what they were in the beginning of the story. So how low have things gotten? That's basically what Dark Night of the Souls is about. So that is Act 1 and Act 2, and then from there you go into Act 3, which is Break into 3, and that's 80%, the aha moment, the lift yourself up and try again moment. You got to show the character realizing that they need realizing what they need to do in order to tackle the problems, both external or internal, whichever, or both. And then after that, you come to the finale, which is 81 to 90%, where the character does what they decide to do in break into doing the break into 3 beat. And because of all the learning and growing they've done, and the support or insight from the B story, which is the characters or the character that you created, their plan works. The bad guys are defeated. The world is changed for the better. What are the battles? How will the character triumph or not? This is another longer section, so you've got the space to make things dramatic and intense. Then after you're done with the finale, you have the finale end image, which is kind of like the first part of the plot, and that's 99 to 100%. This is the opposite of the opening image, which is the beginning one. The after snapshot instead of the before snapshot. You have to show the reader how the protagonist and their world has changed from the beginning. So that is basically Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3 of Save the Cat beat sheet is, and those are that's what I'm trying to do with the plot. I've been using a theme for quite a long time, so I've had no problem with writing a theme out for my story. But then when it comes to taking that theme and applying it to a plot with a short story, or actually multiple short stories that connect with one another, that becomes a different subject altogether, and like I said, I am finding it pretty interesting. It's actually going pretty good, but it's also a slower process than what I'm used to. If I was doing this stuff off the top of my head, it wouldn't be a problem whatsoever. I would be able to just write it down and everything would be good, but it's not working that way when it comes to actually trying to write it out with a theme and a plot and an outline. Right, that's what I said. I shouldn't have said theme. I should have said an outline. I've done outlines all my life when it comes to writing. I started writing when I was like 15, 16 years old, and I was doing an outline by the time I was in junior high school. They taught me in class how to do it, and I just fell in love with it. So I've been writing with outlines since I was a teenager, and I figure I have pretty much spent enough time on this. I want to go through and set up, a few topics throughout the week. I want to do at least one a day, and as I go, I will build up the content that I need to where I can stream on a regular basis all through the day. But so far, what I'm wanting to do is do it like this, I am going to be back again tomorrow. I have recorded this, so I'll play it back at some other time too. So let me check and see what it is that I'm going to be doing tomorrow. And tomorrow I will be back to do history. And for me here lately, I've been into ancient history, so most likely that's what I'll end up doing. And I am going to do gaming, current events. I want to do Friday for strangeness, and then conspiracy on Saturday. Kind of go through some of the conspiracy theories I've heard about, and just strangeness, period, when it comes to, strange stories, everything from UFOs to, ghosts to just strangeness, the Elastic Man, stuff like that. So that's why I called it strangeness, so that it would actually be a variety of things that I could discuss. So with that being said, I am going to end the stream. I hope you guys enjoyed what you heard. If you you want to make a comment in the section below. Like I said, you can go onto my chat, make a comment there too. You don't have to call me and have a voice comment or nothing like that. There's a chat area right there. Click in there and make your comment. I appreciate the feedback. And with that, I'm going to get off of here. You guys have a good day.